My name is Isabella Parkinson, and I work in the Research Service Corps. And you may have heard of Shared Services and Health Sciences, so we are the sponsored research office for that. Today we have our director here, Maureen. So I don't know, Maureen, if you want to raise your hand, she's in the back. And she's a director of the Research Service Corps and also HISPO. So I'll just wait a couple of minutes so everyone can kind of get settled. While I am waiting for everybody to kind of get settled, all of you should have a packet. Does everybody have one of these? I think so. It looks like everyone has one. So why don't I just go ahead and go through the contents of the packet. We have a lot of information to cover in a pretty short amount of time. So on the left side of your packet, you're going to notice there's an agenda. You're also going to notice that we have a training course evaluation sheet. It is so important, even if you have to leave early, that you fill this out for us, because we need to know how we can improve things. What are the types of topics you would like to see? I know that soon we'll be doing also one on subawards. And then in addition, we also have in the packet, we have some thank yous of people that have contributed to this. Also really quickly, when you go to the right side of the packet, you'll take a look. We have here a couple of different large handouts. We have what's our menu of service. So what types of services can we provide you for training grants? And before I get really involved and in depth in this, what I want you to just kind of be aware of, and we'll do some introductions, is if all you remember today we're a resource for you, you can call us. We have a website with information. Reach out to us, ideally sooner rather than later. Always the further back from the deadline, the better. So we have a menu of services that we offer that will go through training grants. We have some handouts on data tables. We're going to talk about the new system extract for data tables through NIH. We have an entire packet on the individual development plan, and we'll actually have Zoe from OGS. She'll be coming by halfway through this to talk about how to help investigators work on the individual development plans. We have some ethics and training courses. And then we have just how do you navigate our website and some useful links. So you should find all that in your packets. If you're missing something or you don't see something, just kind of let us know. So before I get started, what I want to do is I want to introduce to you the team of people that are helping me on this. My team, very, very helpful. And even though I have done training grants for a long time at UCSC and lots of research administration work, in the future, and even right now, Jill Weller, so I don't know, Jill, if you want to stand. Everyone get to know her. She's put a lot of work into this, so please definitely work with, definitely feel free to contact her. She has a ton of knowledge, and if she doesn't know the answer, then she'll get the answer to you. We also have Raul. Stand up. He's doing all of our websites, so everything on the website's very, very key that he is here to help us. So we're going to go ahead and get started. This is the overall outline of today's presentation. So we're going to go through some of our thank yous, then we're going to really focus on the pre and post award aspects of training grants. We'll talk about what's necessary for trainees, and we'll spend some time on reports of data, and then we'll have a break. So we'll have more time to have like some goodies, and then we will get into the T32 appointment process and individual development plans. So about a year and a half ago, when I first came over to the Research Service Corps, one of the big initiatives was to provide training grant services to faculty and to their staff on, how do we help faculty be the most successful they can from an administrative perspective. And so when I went out and did this, the first thing that was most key is to really talk to these faculty members and to get what the needs of the faculty members were. So throughout the website, throughout the presentation, what you're going to see is that what faculty have asked for, and we're more than willing, if other ideas are thought of, to add to that. So I just want to say a huge thank you to all of these people. And we also met with a lot of different staff members that put together the data tables, that put together the budgets with the investigators. So I'll go into, we have four basic menus of service that we offer for training grants. And again, that's in your packet. Menu of service 1 is the training grant website. So that's a comprehensive place where you can go and get information on pre-award work, on post-award work, on reports and data, on what NIH might be looking for. We also provide what's called custom data tracking tools for menu of service 2. So one of the things I heard from a lot of investigators was, well, it's great that there's comprehensive information, but what can you do to set my application apart? How am I going to have my application set apart? That's very, very key. And so what we can do is we can build custom data tracking websites for investigators. We'll go through that in a minute, on being able to track a variety of things. We also have campus training. This is an example of this. We do this biannually. We also go to A to Z. How many of you have attended A to Z training, just by a show of hands? Okay, so a lot of you. We're always at A to Z for 1 day of pre-award training and training grants and 1 day of post-award. And then we're happy to come into individual groups and research teams and do training as well. And the menu of service 4 is data tables and extract. So even though the team, because it's very small, cannot put together the data tables, we can definitely work with investigators and staff and show them where to go to get this information from exporter and reporter. So here's an example, and I'm going to pull up our website later on. So right now what you'll do is you'll see pictures of the website that just lead us into the topic, and then I'll pull you into the website later on and make sure that you guys have access to it. This is a listing of our menu of services on the website. I'm not going to talk a lot about menu of service 1 right now, which is the reporting or the website. And the reason why is because the whole presentation is really about all of that information on there. I just want to give you a highlight of menu of service 2, 3, and 4 before we move on. So menu of service 2, again, going back to kind of that custom data tracking plan, when I met with some investigators, they're like, well, you know, I need to know, how can you help me set my training grant apart? I really wanted to track the amount of publications that a trainee comes in with and the amount of publications a trainee leaves with. Or I want to measure the amount of people that are, my trainees that are leaving with job placement in the field. And whatever those different measures are, we don't come up with the measures, the investigator does that, but what we can do is we can put the format together and the website together and work with the team and show them how to track those. So this is an example of one that we did. We can brand it however you want and have a certain look and feel. It actually comes up pretty quick. We can actually put it together relatively quick. It's really a matter of the researchers and the research team knowing what type of data they want to track. Menu of service 3, I already mentioned this. We do, like I said, A to Z training, fall and spring. Here we are doing this training, and then we have individual faculty and staff training as requested. So sometimes we'll have a small group meeting. The Research Service Corps, I can go out to the group. Jill would be going out to that group and talking to all of you. And then menu of service 4, we'll talk about this a little bit more. So the original vision was for us, we were going to put together kind of a custom data tracking tools for, not custom data, but tracking tools for data tables. We did have, anybody familiar with TGAS here? Some people might have heard of it, some people, okay, a couple of you, yeah. A couple of you might have heard of it. So TGAS is actually been sunset. So if you happen to have used that, that application has gone away. But what we were looking for was, well, what can we develop at UCSD? So in addition to doing the needs assessment with the faculty and the investigators, I worked a lot with NIH because I did that on the post-award side quite a bit, worked with NIH with submitting training grants on the post-award side. And I actually worked with other universities, University of Washington, to see what offerings they were providing. And what we found is that NIH is actually implementing their own data tracking system called Extract. It's not up yet, but our office is one of the test sites in the country, one of 13 of universities. So as we get more information, we will disseminate that to you. And so really it's going to be the NIH way of doing data tables. We'll talk about some of the variations of that. So the focus of today's presentation is going to be on menu of service 1 and kind of going through the website and the resources that are available to you. So what we have here is training grant overview. So the website is set up in a couple of different ways. We have just what is some general information about training grants. Where does UCSD rank? How are they doing? We have information on pre-award, post-award, trainees, reports and data, and then what are the federal regulations. So what you can see here is under training grant overview, we will go through the NIH training grant activities. We'll talk about the participating institutes. we'll kind of just walk through those. So the first thing we're going to start with was, what is a training grant? So interestingly enough, sometimes this question comes up on, well, what is a training grant and what does that mean? And so a training grant is really for an institution to train the next generation of researchers. That's really the purpose of that, the next generation of people that can do this level of scientific work. It is by NRSA. So there are other types of training mechanisms that the university uses, if you're familiar with HRSA awards, but the real focus of this is on T32s, and it's through NRSA, and it's the National Research Service Award. So where we're at UCSD, this data, I believe, is as of 2013, so it shows we're about 12th in the nation for training grants. All this data can be extracted from Exporter or Reporter, depending on your preference of how you like to get data. And we can go through how to individually, one-on-one, how to get that data, and I'll talk about it at a high level today. So this kind of gives you a high-level screenshot of where we're at. So in training grants, everybody that's familiar with any type of research award, an R01, so it might be 5, R01, MH, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm just making that up. There are different activity codes to determine or to designate what the type of research is. And so the main focus that we're focusing on is the activity code of T32. However, there are lots of other different T awards, which I'll show you in a minute. And we're going to talk about the various institutes and centers. And different centers and different institutes sometimes use the activity codes differently. And not all institutes and centers, that's what IC stands for, institutes and centers at NIH, there's 26 of them, not all of them have training grants. So this is an example of just the T activity codes, just the training only activity codes that could be available through NIH. Now what I've highlighted are the blue ones, because the blue T32s are obviously the most popular at UCSD. They were actually at the University of Washington too, coincidentally. But we also have had some T35s, T37s. It's not highlighted, T34s. So this just allows researchers, and if you're a researcher and or working with researchers to see, oh, there's so many activity codes out there. Maybe what I want to do, I can't get a T32 for, but it will fit well into a T15 or into a T34. Again, most common type at UCSD, T34s, we have some of those, T35s. The other thing I want to point out, because the breadth and the details that we're going to go through today, I will just speak for myself, there's absolutely no way I could memorize all of this. I've did training grants for so many years. I have a link to every single reference or source that's on the PowerPoint. Also, Raul and Joel have been excellent at making sure that all the links and the sources on the website go directly to what's being referenced. So if something's written there, it takes you directly to the NIH source that says that. However, I do know, me and myself, even when I was in graduate school, like someone can give you a website, but it's so much better when someone says, well, this is what it says, and if you want to validate it, go check here. And so that's what we've tried to do for you, is this is what it says, and if you want to validate it, check here. So definitely let us know if it doesn't, the links don't work, but I point that out because you'll see links a lot, and that's what it's for. So this was actually a really great idea. One of our investigators pointed out, well, that's great, you have all the participating institutes and centers and links, but you know what would be better, Isabel? And this is why we really want our investigators, our faculty, our staff's feedback, is they said, I really want a link to the direct application. So for example, the Cancer Institute, directly take me to the T32 application that's there, or the information for it. I point this out for a reason, because you'll notice, and I'll show it over there, in some cases, institutes do have a direct link to T32s, and in some instances, they have like a T32, T35 combo page. So it depends on how the institute, I'll just point that out here too, how it really just kind of depends on how the institute or center lists their training grant information. So we do our best to kind of give you the links and mimic it directly. These are also some helpful links that we'll have on there for the NRSA, for the grant applications. So this is a sample, and that's why it's a sample, of the data that we can provide that we provide on the website. So current training grants at UCSD, this is as of 4/15. No, it doesn't say sample on here. It should have said sample. The other thing I want to point out is that our presentations, so today you may say, well, God, what did she say about that? We post all of the presentations on the website, and we actually have someone here videoing this today. So if you are just like, wow, that was so amazing, I want to look at it again tonight or next week, you can play it over and over. We'll have a video of the presentation, or maybe you have a faculty or staff member that wasn't able to make it today. They can also play the video. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about pre-award. We're going to get right into the pre-award. These are all of the topics that you see right here that we have listed under pre-award. So you can see that's just one tab, and it gets pretty, I don't think my pointer's working, it gets pretty heavy. So the first thing I like to do is that when I first started at UCSD, I thought, oh my gosh, there's F31s, there's T32s, there's R1s, like what's going on here? So having an understanding or a general graphic of how training grants work and what is kind of the career development plan is really, it was really key. And I was very fortunate. I actually did not create this. I got this directly from NIH. They provided this to me. But you can see that a predoctoral trainee right here, and then the postdoctoral trainee, and same thing here, a predoctoral, whatever that is, the predoctoral, and then the postdoctoral. You can see what the progression should be for somebody in their career. So the difference is sometimes people are like, well, you know, what's the difference between a fellowship and a training grant? So a fellowship is awarded to a person. It is awarded to the individual person that is going to perform that work. To where a training grant is awarded to the institution. And it provides a lot of prestige to the institution. Just to put a little commentary on this, it's kind of comical, but it's fun. When I went to University of Washington and I talked to them about their system, you know, universities take it very, very serious, and as they should. So I'll just use this as an example. They came and met me in a conference room. They printed out everything they were doing. They said, oh, that's really great. This is a really good idea. You guys have like this huge team that's working on this to make this great. And then they're like, oh, well, can we have all those handouts back? And they collected all the handouts back because they wanted to make sure that the information was proprietary for their organization. So, you know, it does provide a lot of prestige, and we're so fortunate that we have gifted researchers at the university that have been so successful with the T32s. So funding opportunities. So I have on here, I really need like a big banner disclaimer for the dates. So I have on here the general dates. However, I can't overemphasize reading the application for the dates that are due. It is so necessary to read the dates of the application. Sometimes there's a special submission date, so be aware of when your training grant is due for the application. However, I do have on here, for the general NIH cycles, it's on the 25th. So May 25th is coming up. That is Memorial Day this year. So just keep that in mind. If you're working on a training grant submission, that is actually that Monday. I looked it up. So just kind of be aware of that. And then there's also the AIDS application dates. So I do have on here, dates can be updated and change at any time. So just be mindful of that. So training grant roles, program directors versus mentors. So the program director takes the overall responsibility of the award. Fiscally, scientifically, they are the person that's in charge of and really manages that award. Of course, with support of the mentors, support of the staff, but really they're the ones that are fiscally responsible and also scientifically responsible. So it's important that you share with your investigator, or if we have investigators here, that they're really aware of the fiscal rules, because there are a lot of them. And I will go through them in detail. I have some examples. So again, training grant roles. So preceptors and mentors, these are the people that have individual responsibility to mentor and help train the trainees, because they're an expert in their field. In whatever that scientific field is, that's their expertise, and so they're there really to mentor and train that person. And most of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the individual development plans, or what's called IDPs now. So it's important that the mentors are involved in that process, that it's required, is that they complete those. I don't know why I'm doing that, because I think it would go here. So the next thing we'll talk about is the data tables. So before I get started on the data tables, what's really complex about presenting this is, first of all, data tables are just complex. What adds a layer of complexity is NIH is changing things. So I'm training you right now on the data tables that are currently required. However, having said that, just be aware that it's going to change. For sure, it is going to change in the future. So let's kind of get started on the data tables. So what is a data table and why are data tables required? So it's really a numeric way, a data way to be able to present to the sponsor, to the agency, to the institute, what are your qualifications and accomplishments? Those words are directly from NIH. What are the qualifications and the accomplishments of the institution? And the training program structure is broken down into two things. The two things they're looking at are right here, the participating departments and the training faculty. Of course, there's also information on the trainees, but that really falls under the training, the training faculty. So data tables at a high level are broken up into kind of what I like to consider two groups. So one is, what are the types of trainees that we're training here? So we have pre-doc. Pre-doc training grants are always going to use the A tables, always. As of right now. That's going to change a little bit in the future. Postdoc, they're always going to use the B tables. If you're doing a training grant that's pre and postdoc, you're going to do A and B tables. And then you take a look at, well, am I doing a new training grant for the type of application, or am I doing a renewal? And I have a list on here of what tables are completed when. So we'll go through those. So it's really kind of this grid of, oh, I think I'm doing A tables for pre-docs and it's for a new application. Or I'm doing B tables for postdocs and it's a renewal application. So it's some combination of that. In the training grant, just kind of before we look at the data tables, there's also, again, this kind of alphabet soup, right? What does TGE stand for? Training grant eligible. What does group A, B, and C mean? So I have on here a very short level detailed breakdown. It is absolutely key that you go and read this. I actually have it in more detail as well, but in general, A represents underrepresented minorities. B are people with disabilities, and C are disadvantaged backgrounds. NIH is using NSF's definition of this, which we'll look at in a minute. So again, a little bit more background on the data tables. Tables 1, 7, and 8 are all about the participating departments. They want to know, can the department recruit and retain these trainees? Do they have enough scope and breadth? Or are they a brand new department that's just started? Do they have the support of the institution? They're trying to figure this out through the data tables. And then data tables 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are about the training faculty, in that they want to know what are the primary accomplishments of the mentors. What have they done? What is their, what other kinds of significant contributions have they made? So this is really just the framework of the mindset behind what you're doing when you're filling out the data table. So if you're sitting there thinking, well, what am I doing? What's the purpose of data table 2? This kind of just gives a little bit of framework for that. Again, A versus B tables, I can't overemphasize that enough. I've seen multiple times where somebody will submit a B table for pre-docs. It's like, oh, we have to redo these, so just keep that in mind. So here we go. So when are data tables completed? So new pre-doctoral training. These are telling you, so there's a difference in the tables right here. I'm going to just point these out. You see where it says new, new. You're completing these tables. Here we go, right up in here. And then let's say if it's new mixed pre and postdoc, here's a list. So on the website, we're actually outlining for you, these are the tables. If this is your combination, these are the tables you need to complete. Same thing here when we say if it's a revision or a renewal, these are the tables that you need to complete. So there's no way you're going to memorize this. You just want to make sure that you go to the website, you call us. Again, if there's one thing you remember, it's just, oh, there's a resource I can call that can help me with this. That would be really, really key. And then tips for completing the data tables. I just kind of like to point out there's different versions of tables 1, 6, and 9. So be aware of that. because sometimes people might pull the wrong table 9 or add the wrong table 6 in. Gather the list of mentors. So it's really important to know and to work with your faculty, or for the faculty to know who is going to be a mentor on this, because there's a lot of background information that we have to pull from the departments. So the sooner you can get that list together, the better. Let's see here. Okay, so here's again the link to the introduction to the data tables if you want more information. So this is a complete listing of the data tables and what each data table is asking for. However, when we go to, we'll go to this slide first, and then we'll go to the other grid. So this is an example of data table 1, right? You can see I've highlighted A, B, and C. And it becomes really complicated, like, well, what's the A? What's the B? What's the C? There's the TGE for the training grant supported. So we can provide you kind of like these color-coded guides if you need them. However, the biggest thing is making sure you're getting the data ahead of time. The other big thing is that if you're a brand new training grant, or even if you're not and you need help, taking advantage of that menu of service 2 is key. Because you know what we're able to do in menu of service 2 is we're able to start helping you now track this data. I mean, we are more than happy to build custom websites for you, or custom data tracking plans. We absolutely are. Because then you have a database, you have a website of all that information. So when you're like, well, wait a minute, I had to track that training for 10 years, which when we get to the next table, you'll see is that here's a list of tables and how long do I need to track the data for? And you look at table 5A and they want 10 years of data. We can go back through and help you with that. We actually have gone on and pulled all of the trainees for every training grant we can find at UCSD under the reporting. Jill was really instrumental in that. And pulling in all of that data so that way you would know by training grant all of the trainees for everything that X-Train has. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But again, when you start to look at the purpose of the tables, it's important to think about that when you're creating them and when you're thinking about how many years of data, come see us sooner rather than later. Again, here's the other, all of the other tables and how much data past 5 years. It's tough to know the admissions and completion records. And some of this we have to work with you. We need the research staff to go and find as well, because completion records and admission records are very sensitive information, obviously. Again, more information. So here's extract. So I feel kind of silly going through that whole data table thing at such a high level real quickly, knowing that with less than a year, extract is coming on board. But for those people that are completing data tables now, you have to complete the data table as it is. So the goal of extract is, anybody that's used ERA Commons, they've used Xtrain, they have put in all this information, and they say, well, why am I maintaining this data? Because NIH already has it. And NIH does maintain data on the slots. We put all of that on the training grant website. So what they've decided is, well, yeah, we do maintain all this. We're going to put together a training grant data table system, and we're going to generate the data tables. So the original thought was this was going to happen in spring of this year. And so I was on the call, these other 13 universities, and this was in October, November timeframe. They were ready to roll, and then they got a lot of feedback. And they're like, oh, well, wait a minute here. So they have reevaluated. I'm in contact with the director who's managing this right now at NIH. I probably email him once a month like, hey, where are we at with this? So the goal is to be, extract's going to be coming out in fall, or 2015, 16. It's still kind of loose, but this is what has been directly put out by NIH so far. So it's going to be a pre-award submission. Their quote is that basically if you enter information into one system, provides reusable data entry, you don't have to put it into the data table, because if you've already put your trainees into Xtrain, in theory, why would you have to retype the trainees, because they're already in there. So they're going to pull the data from ERA Commons, Xtrain, a variety of different systems to populate the data tables and have the investigators validate them. What's going to happen is you're going to have the 12 tables we have now are going to be collapsed into 8. Table 5 will be combined with Table 2 as summary information. Tables 7 and 8 are also going to be combined. And tables 9 and 10 are going to be eliminated. Now, what should be on here is, as of now, this is what we know. This is directly from the agency, or from NIH. As of now, this is what we know. This could change, so just keep that in mind. And then these are the listing of the new tables. And we have this on the website for you as well. So these are going to be all of the tables, and this is going to be the content of the tables. So you can see 7 and 8 are kind of combined together, and 2 and 5 were combined together. So this is the whole push from NIH to be able to take the data that's put in and now make it usable and accessible to investigators. I think I've kind of already gone through this. So what does this mean for UCSD and where are we now? Well, where we're at is that we are testing actively. We've provided feedback. We've done 3 testing modules that have been provided. We have provided our feedback. We've done webinars, and now they're revamping their system and should be getting back to us. So let's talk about budget preparation. I'm just going to take a look at the time real quick. Okay, so budget preparation. So, you know, a training grant is similar to preparing a budget for another, you know, an R01 or some other type of, any other type of application. You have supplies, so on and so forth, but there are definitely some nuances in it. And if there's one thing I can emphasize, so you're gonna hear me throughout this, put the Postaward hat on, there was 2 of us that used to submit them through OPAS to NIH, is when you're preparing that budget, and I have it here in red, the estimated number of slots is key. The estimated number of slots is absolutely key because you need to be able to know how many trainees are you going to have, what training level are they going to be at, what stipend level are you going to pay them. So building a budget. So you need to know, are they pre-doctoral trainees or postdoctoral trainees? For pre-doctoral trainees, it's a set stipend level that you can find on NIH, and we have it here. For postdoctoral trainees, there are levels 0 through 7. So if you have in mind, or you think you're an investigator, or you are an investigator that says, I have this great trainee, I know who it is, they have 3 years of postdoc, 3 full years of postdoc experience, you need to make sure you're projecting them at the correct stipend level. And what that means is 3 full years, it may take a year, let's say they have 3 1/4 years of full experience. It may take 9 months to get that grant funded. So by the time they're with you, they really probably are expecting to get paid at a level 5 stipend. So working with the budget person is really important in thinking about, well, what is their level of training or what is their level of experience? Hey, okay. So stipends. So stipend levels for the first year of support is determined, I already highlighted this, I'm going to say it again, by the number of full years of relevant experience, not half years, not 3/4 years. Sometimes this can kind of mess somebody up, and a trainee should be able to validate it. And once a trainee is appointed at a stipend level, they're appointed for the entire year at that stipend level. So even if they're an amazing trainee, that's their stipend level, because we're not paying them, we're giving them a stipend. They're not employees, they're being stipended to be on this training grant. So again, the number of full years, and I always like to think when you're putting in the budget, the number of full years when it's awarded. Not right now, but I'm going to project into the future, when do I think this is going to be awarded and what will be their levels. The other thing to consider is, let's say you have a really great trainee and they're ready to go, and you don't ask them these questions, which is, how many levels of, or how many years of experience do you have at the postdoctoral level on another training grant or by some other funded NRSA mechanism? So somebody has a total of 5 years, right, to be on a stipend through NRSA. Because this isn't someone's career. I mean, they're training for their career, but where they're not an employee, I mean, because then they'd be here, you know, they could be here forever, and the idea is to get up and out. So they have 5 years of NRSA funding total, 3 of that as a postdoc. So if they had 2 as a pre-doc and then 2 as a postdoc, they actually have a year left. So you have to project their salary, or you have to budget their salary for that year. So just keep that in mind. I do have on here, there are some cases like MD, PhD programs, and this is the direct link for that, where that's not the case. But in general, just keep that in mind when you're talking to the trainees if you happen to know who they're going to be. We also have tuition and fees. So predoctoral and postdoctoral, there is $16,000 a year, and I'm pretty sure this is pretty current, but again, go to the website when you're building the budget. $16,000 for predoc, and then it's up to $4,500 a year for postdoc, and we have that right in here. So training-related expenses on institutional grants. So let's say there's, some travel that's needed or a special seminar, and we'll talk about travel in a minute for trainees. These are what are considered within reason. Institutional allowance, I just kind of went through that. And then we have trainee travel. So travel is not, a bus to and from, your bus pass to and from the university. It is not parking permits. It is training, travel for a trainee to go to something scientifically related. And it should be applicable to all trainees, unless there's a specific academic or scientific reason why trainee A is going because their area of specialty is different than this person's. It needs to be applied universally, not just, well, I kind of like this guy, or this girl's a little smarter, or whatever it is. Universally, right? These are the types of things, yes. So the question was, she went to trainee travel, she submitted a request to reimbursement for trainee travel, and the travel office is like, no, forget it, the trainee didn't present. And so I don't want to comment on being in BFS at one time. I don't necessarily want to comment on that. I'm going to look it up. I don't think that's the case. What I can do is find the direct reference for you, and really your OPAFS person should do that as well, but we'll work on it, so see me after on that person should have been reimbursed. If it's related and universally applied to all trainees, okay, that's a little different. Okay, so that's a little different. Potentially travel could be right. We have to take a look at that. But what I'm understanding is that not necessarily that they didn't want to pay it because that it wasn't. They didn't want to pay it because it wasn't necessarily related to the training program. No, there's no that I'm aware of, but I will definitely look it up. That I am aware of, and I mean even all the years that I reviewed them in OPAFs, there's no requirement this as a training has to present. If that is the case, we will make sure that we post that. It does have to be scientifically related to the training program. So for example, if I'm studying X, but and it's X in science, whatever that is, but I'm going to a conference in Y on science, and it has nothing to do with that training grant, even if it's a scientific conference, it's not going to fly. It's not going to fly. I mean, depending on who your person is, but if I were looking at that and submitting it to NIH, I'd be like, wait a minute, like something's not right here. Like this conference is about this, and it seems like this conference is about this. What's going on? So we have to look at the details, but not that I'm aware of is there a specific requirement for the trainee to actually have to present. So here's a grid, a kind of high-level grid of what I just went over, which is the stipend levels. Again, notice under postdoctoral, there's a range because it depends on what stipend level they're at. This is the tuition and fees. This is the training-related expenses. So if we look right here, training-related expenses, travel training. This is what's typical. Again, moderation. So if I see something that's outlandish, you don't necessarily want that. Oh yeah, $7,000. I had to go to a conference in Europe. I mean, maybe, but there's not one in LA or somewhere else. So kind of take a look at that, and then this is what the FNA or the IDC is charged on. The other big thing is, and we'll talk about this when we get to stipend codes, or not stipend codes, stipend codes, training codes. Faculty salary is not allowed on a training grant. It is not allowed. It is not allowed on a training grant. General review criteria. This is the general review criteria that was provided by NIH at what they're looking at on the training grant. So again, we have a lot more detail on this on the website for the individual investigator, but the training program and environment, how are you going to do this? What is the program? What is the substance of the program? What makes the program unique? What makes the training grant program director and the principal investigator unique? One of the reasons why we've offered this data service or menu of service 2 to do custom data tracking tools is NIH is all about big data. It's everywhere. They want to know, what are you doing to track your trainees? What are you doing to track your data? So, when you're kind of thinking about the general review criteria, think of the data piece of this. Very, very key. The other parts of this, bio sketches and the human subjects piece of it, and also the faculty salary, institutional commitment. These are all just kind of components that you need to work with your pre-award person on. I'm kind of going through this quickly because we have a short amount of time to cover a lot. So minority and diversity recruitment plans. One of the number one things, I'd say this and the ethics plan, one of the number one things I get is diversity and minority recruitment plans. And someone asked, these are complicated. How do I create this? How do I write my minority recruitment plan? So I really want to emphasize, we have a resource on here directly from NIH that gives you the names, the emails, and the phone number of the faculty and staff that are the best in class at this throughout the country. So they're actually saying, this is who you need to contact. And I will show you that at the end of this presentation, where to go, because I'd say minority recruitment plans and the ethics portion of having an ethics template, which we'll talk about in a minute, is very, very key. So we go through what is an underrepresented minority, what is group A, what is group B, what is group C. But at the end of the day, it's how do I recruit these people? How do I even find these people? So we have on here the links, and the number one is we have, if you look here, examples of NIGMS. This, when you click on this link on the site, and we'll go through it at the end, it's actually going to list the people to contact, what their scores were, how they did. So these people have offered themselves up. In addition, we're very fortunate, Dr. Strathty, I don't know how many of you are familiar, she's willing to also work with investigators. She's done an excellent job on minority recruitment plans, and so she's also a resource at UCSD that we will provide. That's it. So responsible conduct of research. So again, speaking with investigators, they said, can't you just give me a template? I mean, isn't there a boilerplate for this? Why am I writing this? Doesn't the university have one? So we do have a template. However, you cannot just copy the template and send it in. Obviously, you have to customize it. And please, if you're staff here, tell your, let your investigators know, yes, there's a template. We have it located. It was provided by Dr. Kalishman, who's the Director of Research Ethics, and it's ready to go on the website, but you do need to be able to come in and customize the template for, of course, your training grant. I will show you on the website, if you go to Preaward and you select the option, responsible conduct of research, the very last little link, it should say, the very last link here, where is this application? It's going to have for you a, let me make sure, that's it. It's gonna have for you where to go to click on the link, and it's gonna come up in Word. So you can just start typing in it, right? Very, very simple. So feel free to use that. Let us know if changes need to be made. If you have suggestions, we're happy to know that. But again, those are the two big resources from the pre-award side, which is the responsible conduct of research templates and the minority recruitment plans that are complex. So current training grant progress reports, we also have that on the website. This is a sample of what you can find on there. So if you know your T32, their progress report is coming up, go to the site and click on it to see. Then we have the post-award management of training grants. So we have what is the IFOPL, how to set it up, and the budgeting rules. That's all found on the site. So before we kind of get any further into the details of managing this award fiscally, we need to know what is it that NIH is kind of asking. So it's the overall responsibility of the investigator and their staff to make sure that they're monitoring the award. They're monitoring the expenditures. They're meeting the reporting requirements. With NIH collecting more and more data, this becomes more and more important because they're able to track this very easily. Obviously, key is the scientific research and then the progress reports. So we'll talk about the IFOPL for a minute. Those of you that are not familiar with IFOPL, it stands for Index Fund, Organization, Program, Account, and Location. All that means is, what is my unique coding system at the university to have for expenditures to hit the ledgers, essentially, and for revenue to be posted. What's really important, I cannot overemphasize this enough, is fiscally, you need to make sure that you have 3 different program codes and 3 different indexes. From the post-award side, 3 different indexes, 3 different program codes. Keep that in mind. So this is what it should look like. So unlike a regular or a traditional, I would say, research grant, R01 comes in, you see, salary, supplies, equipment, like, I'm not going to put it in sub 4, I'm not going to put it in sub 3, all those different account areas. What you're going to do is you're going to create an index, needs to be created for each of the categories. I am going to tell you now, hands down, this is how this happened. And I'm going to say this over and over, especially for the staff that manage the Postaward side. When I was in OPAFs and I opened up something and I said index, I want to see this grant index by index summaries. And I saw 2 indexes. That's alarm 1. I wonder what's going on here. Right? The last thing you ever want someone to say that is preparing the final FFR that is going to the agency, because you have to talk to the agency, there's a problem, is, I wonder what's going on here. Because guess what that counts? You'll dig a little deeper, right? That's what that does to me. So I'm going to talk to you about all those kind of got-yous from the accounting side of it. So for general expenses, you need to have a program code here of 40000. Now, in the case of an ORU, it's different. It starts with 44, and I have that on there. Stipends, your program code is always 780030. Fees, your program code is always 780050. And then the org code for stipends and fees is going to start with the 78. If you get this, that's fine. If you, for whatever reason, you get the index from OPAFs and it's not on there, that's okay. You just need to make sure it's set up. You need to work together to make sure it's set up. So allocations. There are such strict rebudgeting rules. This is where, because that investigator holds that fiscal responsibility at the end, that if you don't put the buckets of money correctly in the first place and you don't charge the accounts or the indexes accordingly, it can become really, really complex later when you're reporting to a sponsor. Because it may seem when you just open a ledger that, oh, I have $2,000. Wow, that's great. I'm not in deficit. But in reality, you might be in deficit. So we'll talk about what that looks like. So rebudgeting of, I got this question before, rebudgeting of funds from awarded from a lump sum of trainee. Essentially, what this is that this is the rebudgeting rules, and it says rebudgeting of funds awarded in a lump sum for trainee-related expenses is allowable without NIH awarding office prior approval. So what this allows is you can rebudget between stipends and fees, program code 780030 and 780050. You can rebudget between there. Money that is awarded for stipends is not to be rebudgeted for general expenses. It's not, ever. It just cannot be done. And this is where fiscal problems can arise. So here's the questions. Can tuition and fees be rebudgeted to general expenses? No. Can stipends be rebudgeted to general expenses? No. Okay, can stipends be rebudgeted to fees? Yes. Can fees be rebudgeted to stipends? Yes. So like fees and stipends share, not the same account, but like just think of them, they're kind of like married or whatever, they can share the same account and the same money, but they're not going to let the kids whose general expenses like touch the money. I mean, I can't overemphasize how many times I would see this situation occur where it looks as though you have funds that you may not. So I have some examples here. So an example might be that the general expenses is overspent by $500, but the stipends balance is $1,000, and the fees balance is overspent by $250. So in theory, what someone might say is, I still have $250. Great, I don't have to return any money to the agency. But that's not true. What's going to happen in this scenario is you're actually going to return $750 to the sponsor. Now it's $750, it's a small example. Well, what if it was $7,500? How about $75,000? I mean, you can see how this can mushroom out of control very, very quickly. So I have these examples here and on the website to really know how the rebudgeting rules work. Because sometimes what happens is at the end of the reporting period, and usually they require reporting every year, is it looks like you have money that you don't, and then it's not a good situation. Okay, so remember the rebudgeting rules. A balance in stipends or fees means that a balance will need to be reported to the agency unless you can cover it between stipends and fees, even if the overall fund is in deficit. So even if you've overspent general expenses by $10,000, you can't take the money from stipends and fees. Again, contact OPAFs. They have the specific guidance on this. We're going to talk about payroll or payroll title codes next. So why does this become important? Because trainees are not employees of the institution, right? So only certain title codes should show up. So again, let's just pretend for a minute that we are on, I'm pulling up my ledgers, and I go to the stipends index, and I see the correct program code, 780030, and then I see like 27 different account codes. No. Right there, that's the last thing you want someone to say is, well, that's interesting. I wonder why they did that. Because then what does that require? A little more digging, right? So that's not something that you want to be in a situation. So it should be very clean in that the correct title code is listed. In addition, and so these are all the different title codes we have listed here. And then we have on here for graduate, grad medical education, contact Cindy Slaughter for more information on those account codes. So let me give you an example. I go into that postdoctoral trainee account code, and in a perfect world, fiscally, I pull it up and I say, oh, well, okay, there's index, MED 1234, and the stipend code is 780030, or the program code, and the org code starts with 78, and I see one account code. I see 637550. Well, that looks pretty clean, right? And then I see that the correct code is up there, 3253. However, if I go in there, like I had mentioned, and I see all these other account codes, I realize there's something happening here financially. There's something occurring. Why is it that expenses are hitting the wrong index? Lots of times it's just the wrong index was provided, so you need to change those over. I have on here, and I probably will take this off next time Jill does this, 637277. I guess it kind of dates me in 637278. Those used to actually show up under stipends every now and then, and those are acceptable, but typically it's 637550. And then we have the other different codes on here. So I gave you those codes already. They should go. The one thing I do want to point out on here is benefits and NGN will post to the stipends index. It automatically happens. It's okay. So in that case, you just have to move NGN off. You have to move the NGN account codes, and there are the NGN account codes that they need to be moved from the stipends index to the general expenses. So then we get into benefits. So the first clue that an actual employee is being paid on a training grant is that the wrong benefit code's hit. At least that was my first clue. So in general, account code 668750 for life insurance and 668500 state workers' comp are not allowed at all in the training grant. They need to be completely removed off. Completely removed off. So I would come in and you go into and you look at these benefits, and there's a real important key here, and the key is PSBP. And when you look at PSBP, that tells me, oh, it's a postdoctoral scholars benefit plan. Now, if I see other benefits that don't have PSBP, I'm like, well, must be there's other salaries being charged, right? Because benefits follow salaries. So keep that in mind, that the correct codes need to be on benefits. And in addition to that, what you want to be aware of is these ones in red are always going to be moved off. Never. And you need to, so that's really, really key. I'm glad you said that. So just to clarify what she said, and I know we're videoing it, the 2 account codes in red, they're not on the training grant at all. Nowhere. General expenses, nothing. So we talked about, this is another area where fiscally you want to be really, really careful. So NIH has a couple of rules. Well, they have a lot of rules, but with regarding this, it is so important. If I'm an investigator and my grant ends May, or let's just say June 30th, and it's June 29th, I'm going to want every trainee I have that I think is coming to be appointed by that date. Because on a training grant, as long as you appoint that trainee before the end of the budget period, you can lien all of their stipends for the entire next fiscal year as unliquidated obligations. Why that's important is it brings down what might be considered your overall balance. Now with X-Train, if you appoint them June 29th, great. If you appoint them July 1st, there's nothing I can do. Years ago, there used to be the PHS, I think it was 416 letter. And so I don't know what people did, but however it was, the dates seemed to magically match. But now with X-Train, it really has to match, right? You really have to make sure that trainee is appointed. So I just want to repeat that again. If I get a trainee or 5 trainees and I can get them appointed before the end of the budget period, I can lien all of their stipends as unliquidated obligations. And that's important because it brings down that overall balance. So know when your trainees are being appointed, tracking the trainees. We have someone coming in at the end of this to talk about that because you don't want to return money to the agency. You don't want money that is now restricted and you can't move with it without the sponsor letting you. So keep that in mind. This talks about IDC really quickly. General expenses is charged IDC and stipends is charged IDC. It's really tough because on training grants, it's only 8%, right? IDC for all this work. But again, why is it done? It's for the prestige of the university, really for the prestige of the program directors. I mean, it is a really important thing to have a training grant and something to be really proud of. And then these are the IDC rates and the IDC codes that are associated with training grants. Individual development plans, I'm going to talk about really, we have someone coming in from the Office of Graduate Studies that's going to go through this in detail. What I want you to know is you have a packet in here that completely outlines how to do it. You have all of the documents in here directly on the website in a Word format. All you need to do is go in and download them, and she's going to come in and talk about them with you in detail, but they are required. And these are the different steps for the trainees and the mentors. So if a trainee isn't sure, like, well, what am I supposed to do? You could print this out for them. I'm going to start on the trainee side of things. So a couple of important things to note. Stipend policies. I've talked about stipend policies over and over, but it's important to know a postdoc is academic. They are temporarily here. They're not. This is not their place of employment, right? I mean, ideally, they're going to be employed, right? Someplace. And maybe it's going to be here, but it's not going to be as a stipend on a training grant. And they train under the direction and the supervision of faculty mentors, because only a faculty member with scientific credentials can manage and monitor that person to make sure that they're making satisfactory progress. And that's why the IDPs are up. So stipend policies, we've talked about this, but again, just remember, stipends are for a 12-month, for full training appointment for 12 months. If there's an early termination, you need to let NIH know and do that on X-Train, very important. And again, just to reiterate it, total of 5 years of NRSA funding. So people shouldn't be living on NRSA funding for years at a time. Sometimes extensions are granted, though, in policies, in stipend situations, and over the 5 years, it could be someone's in an MD, PhD program. So check with your center. If you have a unique situation, talk to the program person and let them know, like, oh, I have a PhD, MD candidate, and this is what's going on. And get it in writing. I can't overemphasize that, get it in writing. I've already said this, trainees are not employees of the university. If there's a couple of the fiscal things you remember beside the 3 buckets of money that we talked about, making sure trainees are appointed on time so you can carry them over as unliquidated obligations. These are the stipends for undergraduate. Anybody have any undergraduate trainees right now? Okay, yes. All right, stipend policies, again, these are for the predoctoral. Oh, and then this is important to know too. Some programs do subsidize their trainees because, it's not like the trainee is like living a rich life here on the stipend. It's supposed to help for subsistence. So some people do help. San Diego's an expensive place to live. These are the link here for the postdoctoral stipends. I have a list right here. So as you can see, levels 1 through 7, this is a sample. It's actually the real one, but you know why I put sample? Because you got to go check it for that budget period when you're preparing the budget, right? Because it could be different if you just were to go and use this number. So make sure you go to the link that's provided to get the actual stipend amounts. And it's super easy to Google that too. So we'll talk a little bit about what X-Train is. So X-Train, if you have not used it, becomes more and more important now because of X-Tract, right? So with the new data table system, what's going to happen? the new data table system, it's going to pull the trainees directly from Xtrain into Xtract. So you have to make sure appointments and terminations, everything is in Xtrain. If you're not familiar with how to utilize Xtrain, we have on the website, if you go there where it says Xtrain website with more information, we actually have on our website a direct link that gives you probably longer video than what you'd ever want in life, but it's, I think, an hour video on exactly how to use Xtrain, a Captivate video, step by step. So you can watch the video over and over, you can pause it and relook at it. So the big thing to know about Xtrain is the investigator must delegate authority to you, the staff member. Because again, who's responsible for the overall award? It's the investigator. So because they hold that level of responsibility, they also have the right to determine who gets delegated authority and who doesn't. So make sure that you work with them, and you need the assist role in ERA Commons. So here is, for Xtrain supporters, the following activity codes. For appointments, it supports T32s, T34s, T35s, T90s, and it's going to grow and grow. And also for terminations, this is who it supports. Their citizenship, training grant eligible means trainees are U.S. citizens or permanent residents. Okay, there's sometimes more restrictive requirements. Fellowships must have permanent residency at the time of award, trainees at the time of appointment. So it's not that maybe, someone's coming in 2 years into the training grant and it was awarded. That doesn't necessarily matter. It's when are they appointed, what is their status. So go to that for more information. We've talked about this, the support years. You can see that becomes a problem though, because you know why this is over and over and we have this on here? The reason why this becomes a problem with that 5-year, 3-year thing is you have trainees that are listed and then the agency rejects them on the financial status report or the FFR because they're like, this person's been like 7 years, what's going on here? Like, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to remove all their stipends. And then you're left with this like stipends balance that you can't do anything with it. The NIH is like, all right, well, you can return it to us. Well, I didn't want to do that. Okay, so that's why I think it's on here so much. So we have on here the ethics and training. So it's important for certain courses to be taken. Here's the links directly to the courses. We have it in the folder that we've provided to you as well. Go on and make sure that the trainees take the ethics courses. We also have on here trainee pay and taxes. So it's very, very important for trainee pay and taxes. Remember, because they're not employees, I'm going to go to this next slide real quick because it'll kind of summarize it. Tax withholdings by employer UCSD. If you're an employee, all of our taxes get withholded. If you're a non-employee, they're not withheld. So it's really, really key that you communicate this to the trainees ahead of time. And I know, I just saw someone in here that did this. They provided all the letters to me. They did a great job. Where is she? I don't see her now. Okay, well, there's letters on there that you can, and so I can't write, I'm drawing a blank right now, but there's letters on the website that were provided to us, and it's really, really important you give these to your trainees because they don't know that taxes aren't withheld. Okay, they don't know that they can't have the parking permit come out of their check or what they perceive as a check. So just keep this in mind. So reports and data, I want to touch on this briefly because I know my time will be up soon before we have the next people come in and talk. This is the #1 thing people ask for. I need reports and information and data on how many training grants were awarded, how many slots are awarded by program. So this is a small little snapshot here of all of the different types of reports that we now have by fiscal year. Because before this, there were really no reports. It was very difficult to get. We have pulled all of this information from NIH Exporter and Reporter. If you were just to go to Google Chrome or Internet Explorer, whatever you like to use, and type in NIH Exporter, or you could type in NIH Reporter, it provides you a ton of information, actually not just on our university, but on all of the universities that get grants. And a lot of this information is in there. In some cases, as in the case with trainees, it is not in there because it's private information. We have actually, Jill's actually pulled the information down from Xtrain by training grant. So I really would encourage you to look at the reports and data. Our office is not able to create the data tables for every training grant, but what we can do is provide you the data and the resources. However, we ask that because there's over 50 training grants and we have one person, that this is her half-time job, okay, that if data is being provided, validate it, go through it. It's your faculty's training grant or it's the faculty's training grant, go through and validate it, but we have done our best to go through and pull all of that data. So these are the types of reports that we currently have. We have the general training grants list, all the T32s. You'll notice this is almost the beginning of Table 3 with the administering ICs and the project title. We have the training grant slots awarded by department at UCSD, the training grant slots awarded by program director and grant. And these are underneath here. These are the actual data points. I just want to point that out real quick. Where is it? Like when you see that little sub-bullet, those are the actual data points that are in there that we have. So those little sub-bullets right there, they're the little data points. We have the training grant trainees by award, the training grant trainees by department, and the training grant training grant mentors by award. This is our attempt to give you as much information as possible to complete those data tables. And if you need extra information or need us to meet with you for exporter or reporter, we're happy to do that. But we're doing this as kind of like a temporary stopgap until extract comes out. But at least you'll have a list of, okay, well, who are all the trainees in this department? Or who are all of the mentors in this department? Because that information can be very daunting to gather. This is just kind of an overview of slots and pre and post award slots from 2013 to 2015 by area. So again, you can see that we could break this down further. We can tell you how many of these 318 in 2013 were pre-award slots, how many were post-award slots. Again, another sample of data. Obviously, the trainee name is fake here, okay? But we have the project title, the project number, and then the trainee, and when their appointment start and end date was. Okay, this is a big thing that people asked for. So we've provided this for you. Again, we're happy to help you go through this. It's pretty key or pretty important to be able to use Excel relatively well or be able to filter or find someone that can do that for you. I'm more than happy to help you. I was a Microsoft trainer for years outside of UCSD, so if you need help doing pivot tables, it's actually much easier than you would think to go through and slice through the data, but really key to pull down the reports. The last thing I really want to talk about is the federal regulations. So there's so many regulations. It's hard to go through all of them, and we have a short time here. But go to the website, click on the circulars. The new UG's coming out, so that'll be added as well. And then I think that's it. Did I finish in time? So I can take some questions.
I have a postdoc that terminated early, so I want to know if I can use the remaining stipend amount and apply it towards the pre-doc's tuition and fees.
So did everybody hear that question? So the balance that's in the, a little lower? Okay, sorry. The balance, I'm not a professional video here person. The balance that is in the stipends, I'm just going to use a fake amount, $1,000, can be rebudgeted to the fees. So you would just, whatever that balance is left, and you did terminate them on X train, right? Okay, yeah. And then, so whatever that balance is, if it's $1,000, you can rebudget it over to fees. Yeah, because it's just a balance in that program code 30780030. Right, because it's not, it's the balance in the program code that you're looking at. Does that make sense? Yes. So that's a really good point. Yes. So you can rebudget between program code 780030. Hold on, I'm going to put this on here for a minute. 780030 and account code program code 780050, which is stipends. You can't hear me. Can you hear me now? I don't know. Better? How about now? Okay. Sorry. You can rebudget between program code 780030 and 780050. 780030 is the stipends. 780050 is the fees. So if there's a balance of one, you can rebudget to the other. You cannot take the money from either one of those program codes, though, and give it to general expenses. ever. However, if you happen to have a lot of money in general expenses, which is unlikely, but it could happen. It could happen. You know, maybe, I don't know, everyone came with all their own stuff or something. If you happen to have a lot of money and no one traveled, you can rebudget from general expenses to stipends and fees. The reason why is they're not giving UCSD a training grant to say, here's money to train trainees, but oh, you ran a little short on stuff, go ahead and take those stipends and cover general expenses. That's the methodology behind that, if that makes sense. Okay, I'm going to come back here.
Oh, okay. My question is, I just currently did a progress report for a training grant.
Okay.
And I was actually putting the trainees into this program called Career Track, if anyone's ever heard of that. Career Track is another program that NIH compiles data as well for all the pre-docs and postdocs. And what I was able to do, being updated with entering my pre-docs and postdocs into this system, I was able to go in there and create tables 12A and B automatically because the information was there. So that's another resource, a website you guys can go to if you're currently doing NIH grants and training grants until this information is full-blown.
And you know what would be really great? I'll take this.
I work for Dr. Stratton.
Oh, good. Oh, yeah. You know, well, what would be really great, good, so you can tell we gave her a nice plug here. But what would be really great is actually if you can meet with Jill after, because, you know, any data you have that we don't, we're happy to post, right? So it's taken about a year and a half to do this. I mean, like this career track, we're absolutely interested in posting that for everybody. So we're university, it's about sharing the information that we have, so we'll absolutely do that. And just really quickly, can you stand up? Yes, I knew you were here. So stand up. So all of the great trainee forms that are online have been provided by this great lady. So just go ahead.
Roz and Laura, I've managed our GI training grant probably for the past 17 years. So I've accumulated a lot of forms and information.
We just need to give her a really big shout out because that's, I mean, really helpful to have all those forms for all the trainees on taxes. So thanks. I knew I saw you, but then. I was hiding. Oh, okay, I'll be right there.
Yes, I'm preparing a new T32 for just postdocs, and I just wasn't sure what you was meant by 60% of the $4,500 or the 60% of the $16,000 for other expenses that aren't the stipend. So what can those be?
So essentially so let's say, I mean, at this university, it doesn't really apply per se because our tuition's more expensive than that, but let's say you were to go to a really inexpensive university, it's 60% of that with a cap of.
Okay, so it's 60% of the cost, so that's a cap.
That's the cap.
Budget for the cap.
Yes.
And if I don't use it, then I end up, okay.
Exactly, but I mean, you know, there could be places where it's much cheaper to go, so they're not saying, yeah, go up to the cap, they're saying 60% of that or the cap.
I just wanted two things. One was that for visual learners, if you're talking about the stipends, the fees, and the thing, just think of an upside-down triangle. You have your stipends, your fees, and your journal expenses on the bottom. You can cross rebudget, and you can up, but you can't go down.
Yeah, that's a great little picture. We could add that too.
But also, you didn't talk about carry forward. You talked about stipend carry forward, but you can't carry forward the training grant expenses in GE.
Yes. So what you can do is that if there's a balance at the end of the budget period, that balance cannot be forwarded without prior approval from the sponsor unless it's the stipends portion that can be if they're appointed. And maybe it's for a specific institute, but I have the actual quote on there that it is not allowed and we've been rejected. But we'll look and see. Let's look. Yeah, let's look and see because we'll absolutely update it and make sure you get it to Jill. Are we timed? Okay. So I'll be here afterwards and then we'll take a break and get food and snacks and then we'll come back.